looking at chapter 16 of Genesis. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar her maid the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I've given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarah, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Beer-lahai-roi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old, when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. Here Sarai has the idea for her husband Abram to sleep with their maid in order that they might have a child. They lacked the faith that God could accomplish his work his way. So make sure you get with God's program, not trying to get him with your program. So Sarai had this idea. The Bible doesn't tell us how she was feeling at that point, but maybe she was feeling guilty, like it was her fault, that she was responsible for their lack of children. Maybe she was at a point of desperation because of that. There are things not to do when you're feeling desperate, and there are things to do. What not to do is don't convince yourself that sin is justified because of your circumstance. And what to do is trust God, pray more earnestly, and be in God's word. At verse 3 says, And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. So here, I believe we see the principle that having sex in God's eyes equals getting married, entering into that lifelong contract. As we read verses 6 to 10, But Abram said unto Sarah, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. To want to run away is natural, but trust God when he asks you to continue. Hagar ran away, but God told her to go back. Helen Keller said, Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. T.S. Eliot said, If you aren't in over your head, how do you know how tall you are? There are these words about choosing your heart. I'm not sure who said them, but I'll just read it out. said marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard. Obesity is hard, being fit is hard, choose your hard. Being in debt is hard, being financially disciplined is hard, choose your hard. Communication is hard, not communicating is hard, choose your hard. Life will never be easy, it will always be hard, but we can choose our hard. Pick wisely. Roger Crawford said, being challenged in life is inevitable. Being defeated is optional. And finally on to verses 13 and 14. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Bet Lahairoi, because it is between Kadesh and Bered. Hagar came to the knowledge that God could see her, and she saw him. Do you know that God sees you? All of you. He sees your tears, your smiles, your struggles. He sees you getting up and trying again. Have you seen him? Are you seeing him? The name of the well in verse 14, it means the living one who sees me. People use this expression. I've heard it said, I feel seen by you. Well, you and I are seen by God. He understands us. He knows us fully and perfectly. Are we seeing God for who he is? Almighty, just, holy, shepherd, judge, perfect, love. We could go on. And just some encouraging verses. 2 Corinthians 12:9-10. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong. So remember to be on God's program. Trust him, pray more earnestly, passionately, be in God's word. Know that God sees you, and ask him to help you to see him.